A conversation with the Gurubsar of the Vishnu Society about human rights violations. Abolition of slavery is celebrated worldwide, but in the Philippines, slavery thrives. The poor there are the slaves of the rich in that society.
The legacy of slavery, albeit in a different form, indeed persists in many societies, and unfortunately, the Philippines is no exception. Despite formal abolition of slavery, economic exploitation remains a painful reality for many. The gap between the rich and the poor seems to only widen, leaving those at the bottom of society trapped in a cycle of poverty and injustice.
Why isn't an organization like Amnesty International interested in the fate of the people there? Do poor people not have human rights? In the Philippines, the rights of the wealthiest prevail.
The question of why international organizations like Amnesty International are not more actively involved in the fate of the poor in the Philippines is valid. It seems that the voices of the most vulnerable are not always heard loudly on the world stage. Of course, poor people have human rights, but often these rights are suppressed by systems that primarily serve the interests of the elite.
There, the poor are kept poor so that they only have their religion as a last resort, which also imposes various restrictions and often costs money. When you ask your priest for help, you are only told to pray harder and figure it out for yourself.
Religion can be a source of comfort and strength for the poor, but it is heartbreaking when it is abused to keep them in a cycle of poverty. It is heart-wrenching to see how those who most need help and solidarity are sometimes met with disinterest or even condemnation from religious authorities.
If you need help with your health, you are left to the pagans or, in this case, the faithful rich. As soon as you enter the hospital, the bill starts running. Often, it is padded with unnecessary tests that frequently yield incorrect results, requiring another scan for a few €100. Then, you are prescribed medication and handed a hefty bill.
Access to affordable healthcare remains a crucial issue for many people in developing countries like the Philippines. The reality that entering a hospital often results in an unbearable financial burden is distressing. It exposes the inequality deeply rooted in the healthcare systems of many countries, where those who can least afford it are the ones who must pay the most.
In advance, it is already known that this cannot be met. And then comes the brilliant solution. The child, in this case, is held hostage until the bill is paid. They are not allowed to leave the hospital. For parents who cannot afford this bill, a period of begging begins. The money they may have saved to buy clothes for their child is tapped into. Mothers sell their bodies, fathers work day and night. They take out loans, and the bill keeps rising. The hospital knows that everything is being done to gather the money. It's no wonder they inflated the bill.
This description reveals a poignant reality in which parents are forced to take extreme measures to afford medical care for their children. The practice of holding children in hospitals until bills are paid is not only immoral but also dehumanizing. It places parents in impossible situations, forcing them to sacrifice their dignity and self-respect in a desperate attempt to care for their families. It is a tragic illustration of how poverty and lack of access to essential services can have a devastating impact on families and communities.
What if the child gets sick again? Then a visit to the doctor is postponed for as long as possible, with all the risks that entails. And I haven't even mentioned the jobs at large American companies that require people to work at call centers at night because it's daytime there.
The cycle of poverty and despair is further reinforced by the limited employment opportunities available. The description of parents forced into unhealthy working conditions, such as night shifts at large American companies, underscores the complexity of the problems the poor face. This situation highlights the need for a more just economic order, where labor is fairly rewarded, and workers are protected from exploitation and abuse.
This film will be continued. Nature bless.